Good evening. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, the nationally syndicated show on radio, TV, podcast, live streams, first on 93 WIBC. We have a lot of influx on news that's coming right in as quick as it can in the Middle East. The President of the United States appears to have directed yet another round of strikes. Now, at this point, the previous night ended. So after we were all in bed, the United States and Saudi Arabia flew a combined sortie during the morning hours, hitting a bunch of Iranian militia-backed targets, which I believe is the first time that the United States and the Saudis have flown side by side in offensive operations since the Gulf War. So that would be a new bit of information on that particular side of things. The UAE and Bahrain as well, contributing as well to some GPS jamming style stuff. There have now been explosions heard as of a whopping 4.5 minutes ago on this July 29th at Nurabad and Sirak, Iran. Now, the President of the United States has, of course, been plastered in the Sirak area. That's right next to the Strait of Hormuz itself, along that Persian Gulf and Gulf of Oman. But it's not quite clear yet where the main part of the strikes are going to take place tonight. That said, the president did say in two pretty intense statements that the United States was going to hit Iran. This was the less colorful one today in his press conference.
In the meantime, we're going to be hitting them very hard because it's our turn to hit them. They know it's coming. They're asking us not to do it, but they tried shooting it last night. So we had 5 rockets shot going 8,500 miles an hour, and all 5 rockets were knocked down to the ground. But they nevertheless took a shot, so it's our turn. And we'll see if we get there with an agreement at some point, but we're going to hit them very hard.
So the president said to the Wall Street Journal, and I'm going to have to be very, very careful in how I say this so that Allison doesn't have to hit the censor button as hard as she can. The president announced in an interview with the Wall Street Journal that the United States is going to, quote, beat the effing S out of Iran, end quote. So, again, not exactly suggesting it's going to be a very peaceful evening. Now, the president of the United States has made a lot of promises over the last couple of days. And we've seen consistently, by the way, that there are a number of a number of international efforts that have been made to move economic facets out of the Middle East, or at least out of the Strait of Hormuz, redirecting oil flows elsewhere. We do know right now that as far as the oil prices are going less and less by the day, do we see international effect based on the Strait of Hormuz. So the more conflict that occurs and the more that international efforts are rebasing away from the Iranian conflict, you're starting to see less of an impact on the Brent crude oil and other indexes. Now, or indices, I should say. This brings us over to the situation that occurred earlier today. So on July 29th, that being today, earlier, a drone, at least one, possibly two, struck the U.S.-owned floating storage and regasification unit, the Energos Winter. That would be just off the coast of the Egyptian Mediterranean port of Damietta, causing a fire that spread to at least one other liquid natural gas LNG related vessel, the Gazlog Salem. So maritime security firm Ambry, who has a lot of really nice people working for them, by the way, assessed that this was a drone strike based on the initial information so far. I trust Ambry, at least a lot of their analyses are pretty on point. Trading and security sources corroborated that the drone, or as one pundit put it, an unidentified projectile, very likely a drone based on the speed of the craft, hit the Energos Winter, reportedly on the starboard side, sparking a blaze during the cargo handling operations at the liquid natural gas terminal. Port services firm Inchcape reported that 2 gas tankers were on fire. There's some different footage of this that's at best rather spurious. So the president did get a chance to talk about this later. There was a reporter that asked about the ship being struck off the coast. Now, I will point out that some of the footage that we've received so far is very, very sketchy. So there's a lot of smoke, ships burning because it was struck sideways. The fire was pretty quickly put out. Several craft, which are now in the Middle East alongside a lot of our natural gas craft refueling stations are on standby because they don't want another incident after the USS Cole situation in the 90s. Now, the president's statement regarding the strike by Iran, of course, these drones we believed at this point were launched from southern Lebanon, from Hezbollah. Here was the president's statement on that today.
Any indication it's Iran related? Does it represent?
Well, I'm going to give you a report. I've been briefed. It's a little more of the same, but it's going to be straightening out. It's going to be straightening out. In the meantime, we're going to be hitting them very hard because it's our turn to hit them. They know it's coming. They're asking us not to do it, but they tried shooting it last night. So we had 5 rockets shot going 8,500 miles an hour. And all 5 rockets were knocked down to the ground. But they nevertheless took a shot, so it's our turn.
So these strikes that are just now beginning to take place, and I mean that in the last couple of minutes here, and our time, if you're watching this later, it is 7:12 and 25 seconds p.m. Eastern time, and the strikes are just now resuming. So there was a 5-day sort of pause. The reason I have to say a sort of pause here is because the United States, the Saudi Arabians, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and sometimes Jordan, being the Y of the list of vows in this case, took part in a series of strikes that were meant to cripple Iranian operations in other regions. So Iraq, Western Iraq, got absolutely pummeled yesterday, attempting to take out Iranian-backed militia forces inside the very war-torn country. So as of this moment, we know there are explosions near the military base in Nurabad, which is, again, near the northern end of the Persian Gulf. And then in Sirik, the island next to the Strait of Hormuz, where there have been all of the strikes. And I just mean all of the strikes. We actually have, again, this map here. We've used this before because Sirik has now been plastered. I mean, more times at this point than a college frat party. I have not seen an island glassed this much since the U.S. struck Japan. Sirik has been hit quite heavily. Or I shouldn't say island, I should say port here at this point. So that news aside, CENTCOM has not yet issued a statement, and it's not clear whether or not additional strikes are coming. Additional B-1 Lancer bombers have been seen taken off from the Royal Air Force bases in the UK and have been heading south and east towards the Middle East. Now, moving on from that side, there are additional concerns from several of the think tank world, a couple of senators, that the United States is very, very quickly moving through its stock of interceptors, the Patriot missiles, as well as the THAAD battery missiles that we use to intercept a lot of drones and use to intercept a lot of missiles. Now, I should probably be a little careful in how I say this. The United States is, in a large part, moving away from how it used to intercept drones. There are additional measures that are far cheaper that the United States is now attempting to use in order to take down hostile drones. It's just not clear yet whether the United States is going to develop a cheaper alternative to the Patriot missile systems, or basically how we do missile interception in general. Now, according to the Center for Strategic International Studies, the estimated inventories suggest that the United States has, as opposed to the pre-war phase back in February 27th, said that we have 2,300 Patriot missiles on standby, and as of today, we have between 759 and 827. And then pre-war, and we had 452 missiles ready for the THAAD systems, and today we have between 230 and 270 of them. I'm going to be very, very clear right off the front here. These authors' calculations on the Department of Defense budget materials for 2027, the actual number of interceptors, both with the THAAD systems and with the Patriots, are very, very classified, and for a reason. This is a conversation that I actually had with Sabrina Singh, the Biden administration's Pentagon press secretary that handled a lot of the Eastern European war affairs during that administration. After a CNN Newsnight discussion, lively one, we had a conversation a little bit later about classified information that we were both privy to. Neither of the number sets here on the pre-war Patriot and THAAD numbers, or the ones that are estimated today, neither of those are true. The idea that the U.S. is scraping the bottom of the barrel on Patriot and THAAD interceptor numbers? No. So whether some think tank goober is doing Sean Spencer math from Psych, as that's how this is going to work, absolutely not. Radio crew, we have to send you guys over to the commercial break. There's more news that is coming in just as quick as we can get it over. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We will catch y'all in a second. All right, live stream crew, let's give you a couple of other details here before we start tackling the chaos over in the United States Senate. So there are a couple of craft that are currently on the way to the Middle East. It's not clear right now whether or not the United States is going to move additional naval assets, but we do see additional reconnaissance craft and, of course, as we already talked about, bomber infrastructure and escort craft that are moving from different United States positions around the globe to the Middle East. Again, we still do not have an official statement from CENTCOM, although Axios is now reporting another wave of strikes is underway. However, there are a couple of issues that the Iranians are facing on their side of things. So first and foremost, the Chinese have now been alleged to be sending over 400 rocket systems, rocket launchers of sorts, over to Iran. The president was asked about that today as well. Here you go.
President Xi told you that China would not give or sell Iran any weapons. And there's a new report that Iran's about to get 400 rocket launchers from China going through Pakistan to Iran.
Well, that would be surprising. I mean, things like that happen, but that would be surprising. He told me very strongly he wouldn't partake, and he knows I'd be quite disappointed. Yeah, please. And he's coming here, I think, on September 24th.
Now, why is this of note? Because, again, the president kind of does a little bit of futzing here and there. Again, we get to these kind of matters as the United States goes to, again, these particular strikes, these particular matters. Right now, the president of the United States is aware, so far as at least we can tell based on the statements from this administration, that the Chinese and the Russians are attempting to provide targeting information and, again, missiles, other types of rocket launching systems, supplies, any kind of assets that they can to the Iranians to keep the U.S. busy. And the president of the United States is not going to immediately come out and say, yes, they're doing it, and this is what we need to do X and Y. This is one of the reasons there were some concerns after the Ukrainians started getting involved, striking an Iranian vessel in the Caspian Sea. Because then, once the president starts making statements from the podium, this is again why the president's address to the nation on voter interference by China was such a big deal. At some point, once you start alleging acts of war openly, everyone's always engaged in espionage against other countries and supplying little bits here and there that some might consider acts of war. Once you start openly acknowledging direct military aiding and abetting, you go from Cold War to hot war. And so the president of the United States saying, there might be something a little bit to that. That's a lot of kind of diplomatic obfuscation, at least from, again, don't take it from just yours truly, but also has been cited before from both the president's office, specifically Carolyn Levitt, the press secretary. The Iranian state media is additionally, again, this is a source out of Qatar, now arguing with itself as the regime starts to split at the same time. This is a little something different that we haven't seen before. So we have seen the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps split into kind of 2 to 3 factions along the Strait of Hormuz. We've seen that over the last couple of weeks because they've been firing at Qatari vessels, even a Chinese vessel or two. However, there is a faction of the Iranian parliament that has been directly attempting to communicate with Iranian state media to put out completely different messages than the core Arachi and Ghalibaf segment of the Iranian parliament and foreign ministry. Because there are 2 separate sets of information that are being sent out about protesters being executed, for example, in Isfahan. There's one section of the extremely fundamental Islamic regime in Iran that is attempting to brag about the executions that they are carrying out in Isfahan and other Iranian cities as people in Iran start to rise up regardless of having firearms or not. And then the rest of the Iranian regime that does want to try to squeak out some kind of a deal with the United States through Qatar and Pakistan really doesn't want that bragged about on the national stage. So there was one Iranian media account taken off the air today, and one of the social media accounts has been suspended. It's a very, very strange set of circumstances. The radio crew is coming back from the commercial break. A couple of updates that we want to bring everyone up to speed on. The attacks on Iran are currently underway. There is no statement yet from the Central Command. Again, this is after a 5-day pause. But as these particular events come from the president saying that the U.S. is going to beat the effing S out of Iran, to the Wall Street Journal, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Bradley Cooper, according to Wall Street Journal, this is right before 7, has reportedly presented Trump with plans for a 10 to 14-day air campaign targeting Iran's missile arsenal. There are statements that Trump has yet to decide whether to authorize fuller operations or opt for an airing strike. The Senate really doesn't know what to do with this. And the reason I bring up the Senate is because the Senate is currently in a state of chaos. And theoretically, the Senate is supposed to be receiving consistent updates from the administration on expansion or the constriction of military actions anywhere in the world. But the Senate, about to go on its beautiful August recess and dealing with a lot of arguments over the Save America Act, according to one senator speaking to us on background, made it clear that the Trump administration isn't even able to reach all of the senators that it normally would need to for intelligence and military updates. Which is a bit bizarre, because if it's either Chuck Schumer's crew or Thune's crew that can't even reach out to all of the senators, well, that's going to create a couple of downstream problems that don't just involve Iran. But again, we're in the middle of the midterm season. We're in the middle of the Save America Act fight. We're in the middle of a number of hearings, which we're going to get to regarding Fauci in just a couple of minutes. But as far as the United States is concerned right now, ongoing military operations, not seeing, again, plans at this point to seize any kind of violence. Again, there are a couple of moves that have been made towards continuing to cut Iran off economically as being a bigger impact on the regime. There are additional reports of loud explosions in Vows, Iran. Again, that's much closer to the Iraqi and Kuwaiti borders. We're going to be keeping an eye on this throughout the evening. Now, again, speaking of the Senate, the President of the United States is starting to change his tone just a bit on Senator Thune. Again, in that same press conference today, Trump said regarding Senate Majority Leader Thune, if, after August, that Trump would still support him as the majority leader for the Senate. Well, here's the president.
On Leader Thune, what's your reaction to him saying that there's no evident path to success on killing the filibuster or passing the Save America Act?
Well, that's too bad for him. I mean, that's too bad for him and too bad for the Republican Party.
Do you believe that?
He's got the votes. He should get it done.
Now hang on a second here. That's a different statement from the President of the United States. The president saying he's got the votes is very different than Trump saying that Thune needs to go find the votes or should try to work up getting the votes. That's a different statement from Trump. But again,
he should be able to get it done.
Trump says you should be able to get it done. Again, not quite sure at this point whether the president is going to continue supporting John Thune in his position and leadership. Thune also got before the cameras and answered a question on this August recess and this plan for the Save America Act. Again, a lot of voter ID provisions. Of course, the insider stock trading ban attached to it. Here was the Senate Majority Leader being questioned about this today.
Are you still planning to proceed with the August recess now that about 12 of your Republican colleagues are calling to stay behind?
So if you couldn't hear the reporter because her voice was a little bit faint, and if we turn up the gain really hard, it hurts all of our ears regardless. She says, are you still considering going through with the August recess if you have 12 Republicans so far in the Senate who are now bucking your leadership and saying they want to stay and they want to get this stuff passed? Has this changed your mind on the Save America Act?
On the recess and work through the Save America Act passed?
I'm for anything that we can do to get the Save America Act passed. What I always ask, the question I always ask is, what is your picture of victory at the end? What is the end game here?
What is the picture of victory here? What's the end game? Okay.
And if, in fact, staying here for the month of August means that we assume at some point there are going to be 10 Democrats that cross over and vote for the Save America Act, I think we can stay here till Christmas. That's not going to happen.
All right.
And the other thing I would say about that is that there aren't going to be 50 votes to get rid of the legislative filibuster. So if budget reconciliation is a path forward, if we conclude that there is actually a chance to get an outcome or a result there, I'm open to doing it. I think all of our colleagues would be open to staying around here if that were true. But I think that we have to see, first of all, that can be proven to be the case. And but I don't think, having a Congress, Senate sitting around here for the month of August in quorum calls or having to vote on Democrat amendments is probably.
I really love him saying, I don't think it's really useful to have the Senate sitting around here in quorum calls. The Senate's not going on a true recess. It's not. It will still have to shuffle a couple of individuals in, I think every 48 or 72 hours, in order to say, oh yeah, we're just like briefly sort of pseudo adjourned. They're not actually in a recess, or then the President of the United States would be able to make a bunch of recess appointments. Up to and including, I believe, Todd Blanche is the Attorney General of the United States, which would really upset Senator John Cornyn of Texas.
Probably a good use of anybody's time. So we will see and see where the conversation goes.
Now, Thune suggests, as you heard, that he wants maybe the reconciliation bill. You know, if you pass it through reconciliation, you can get the Save America Act stuff through. No, you can't. No, you can't. It's not a reconciliation matter. We've talked about this consistently. So the President of the United States, again, appears to be making, from the White House Legislative Affairs crew, could be making their own whip count here and saying that maybe there are a couple of votes that they have that we haven't seen elsewhere. Now, I'm not sure. I don't really want to get into a super speculative answer as to whether Trump is playing a different game than Thune here. However, I will say it's not unlikely that the White House is directly speaking to various senators at this point instead of relying on Senate leadership. That is a very different way to manage the administrative action towards the legislature. And that brings us at last, but certainly not least, towards the complete chaos in the Fauci hearing today. Now, when I say complete chaos, I mean this. The chaos is the events surrounding it. So, of course, Dr. Anthony Fauci, after all of the scandals, not only from what we knew already regarding his handling of COVID-19 and the misinformation that he put out, all the way over to the millions and millions of lives that were affected by that, pitching and rolling over into the very bizarre situation regarding his diary on public servers and things, was subpoenaed by Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. They brought him before the Senate committee. He gets up in front of everyone, goes into this weird tirade, and then just pleads the fifth forever. Now, my summary of this, I'm more focused on the reaction and then kind of the next steps. Like, what can he actually be hit by? Because as we said yesterday, I knew that very little was going to happen, but there's some different legal analysis on what this actually means and kind of precedent that's set. And if you plead the fifth, can you use a pardon? What are the rules here? And I think that Victor Davis Hanson, Dr. Victor Davis Hanson, has a bit of a better take on it. So joining us this evening on his exclusive reaction, Dr. VDH.
So I watched Anthony Fauci before Congress. He did a funny thing. He gave a statement blasting his critics, and then he gave them no chance to reply.
Given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, and recently his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at embarrassing and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars, unquote.
In other words, while he was under oath and subpoena, he followed the subpoena, he gave his opening statement. But then he said, this is going to be a one-way hearing, because every single question, and I stopped watching at 90 invocations of the Fifth Amendment, he pled the Fifth Amendment.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, well, silence is admission.
Think of the precedent that establishes. Congress wants to find out, wants to investigate, subpoena somebody. If you don't go, you're going to go to jail if you're Steve Bannon or Peter Navarro. But if you're Anthony Fauci, as in the case of left-wing Lois Linner, you just blast everybody and then you shut up and hide behind the Fifth Amendment and make a mockery while the Democratic senators walk out and try to ruin the entire inquiry. But what was the inquiry about? Remember, we talked about that. 1,100 pages that, in his arrogance, he kept a diary. And in the diary, he admitted to things, or he confessed things that were absolutely contrary to his public policies and his positions on everything from masks to shutdowns to quarantines to vaccinations to the role of Scott Atlas in the White House to Donald Trump to the origins of the Wuhan virus itself. So we don't know who to believe. Do we believe when he was confiding to the diary, or do we believe when he was talking to the public? We have no idea. In other words, he did blow up his career, not just by being arrogant and using that fiefdom to not only enrich himself. We got $1 million grant while he was the director of the National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases.
Your net worth now is north of $12 million. You got over $1 million in cash awards during COVID, during a 12-month, 24-month span during COVID. $1 million you knocked down in cash money using federal resources. Now you're worth more than $12 million. You've got a pension that in its first year paid out north of $400,000 a year.
But also to speak, to be a public persona, to be flattered by Hollywood celebrities. About 10-20% of his corpus of diary entries are all about his celebrity and how famous and wonderful and how many people want to enrich him. So now he's imploded. Everybody should, I guess, again, think about the Greek or the Aeschylean idea of hubris, that is, overweening arrogance leads to complete recklessness, ate, and the gods intervene, and the goddess Nemesis provides divine retribution. Part of me felt sorry for Anthony Fauci. He's 85 years old. He's been in government years. Some of his years were not too bad, but the way that he was so arrogant and the lives that he affected and the people who lost businesses and the people who miss cancer screenings and keep surgical procedures because of the nationwide lockdown and the destruction of the economy and the psychological damage that ensued, and people who trusted him and when he said that this experimental vaccination was both safe and it would prevent infectiousness and being infected, and all of that was untrue. And so here this poor old man was up there trying to plead the Fifth Amendment, and he said, basically, I have nothing to apologize. You are unfair, and I resent this, and I'm done. I'm not going to answer one question. You have no right to cross-examine me on anything in my diary, anything I've said. So it was really the complete career and personal destruction of Anthony Fauci.
Thank you very much to VDH for sending that our way. Now, the consequences that are on the way, because I really wanted you guys to get a little bit of perspective on someone to frame this up as well as VDH did. So a huge thank you to him. Thrilled to have him as our senior contributor over at the Daily Signal. The actual downstream effects of this, there could be something pretty significant. You could see a situation, again, there have been a lot of legal arguments that have been made that because the Fifth Amendment was invoked, that he's basically tossing aside the pardon. So there's a legal argument to be made that he's been pardoned. Court precedent says, this is according to Jeffrey A. Tucker over at the Brownstone Institute, that the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply whenever you have been pardoned. You have to talk about it. It's one of the actual points of the pardon, is that you're able to talk about it and provide context. And actually later on in his life, of the very original blanket pardon, this is one of the things that Gerald R. Ford was trying to accomplish with the blanket pardon that he gave, the preemptive pardon, as it were, to Richard Nixon. Which again, I believe that very clearly the evidence shows that he was set up, and that's another conversation for another time regarding Nixon. But Gerald R. Ford and how he carried out the pardon said that what he wanted Nixon to do was communicate openly about the incident and everything about it, under oath, in public, so that the American people could restore trust quicker to the system. That was one of the reasons that he worded it that way. And that's also what helped establish this precedent of, if you're pardoned, the Fifth Amendment, you don't get to pull it out. But I mean, he pulls out the Fifth Amendment so much, so consistently, so many times that and not to mention, I should point out also that his lawyer, Fauci's lawyer, starts interrupting so many times that they have to throw him out of the courtroom which I don't think I've ever seen before.
You're not recognized. You're not recognized. If you are unruly, you will be removed from the proceeding. You are not recognized, and you are not recognized, sir. Sir, you are not recognized.
That, by the way, I've heard people say, "Oh, well, it's his lawyer. He's supposed to talk." No, that's not a thing. I know that a lot of people like to believe that they naturally know and understand everything about law and legal theory and like how constitutional precedent works because they've watched Law and Order. But that's not how this works. Your lawyer doesn't get to step in and just talk for you all the time. That is very, very much not a thing. Or you know, in this particular instance, because this isn't a courtroom, this is a congressional hearing, the lawyer doesn't get to just talk for it. That's not how this works. It's not how this functions. It's a hearing. He's under oath. He's been subpoenaed by Congress. Congress has the ability here to put him in a very special little jail cell that exists under the U.S. Capitol if they want. The president can't say anything about it. The Supreme Court can't say anything about it. Every branch has their own little version of absolute power in the checks and balances that they can use effectively that isn't quite checked by the other. This would be one of them. Congress has that authority. Did they use it? No. Now, the actual outshoot of what happens from this is chilling, because if this is allowed to stand, then congressional hearings don't matter. You can just get up in front and plead the fifth, and plead the fifth, and plead the fifth, and then nothing ever happens, which is kind of where things are going anyway, unless there's a Republican in the hot seat and it's a Democrat Congress, that is. Radio crew, welcome back to the From Your Commercial Break. Fauci's lawyer getting tossed out today because he wouldn't shut up.
You are not recognized. Security.
Now, by the way, security is not the actual Robert's Rules of Order. And you give the little actually here. Rand Paul should have said, "Would the sergeant at arms please escort the individual who is not recognized from the premises?" You know, he didn't. He's like, "Security, yo, bounce this man out of here."
We'll hold off. But you will respect these proceedings. You were told not to sit at the table. You insist on sitting at the table. And we told you you would not be recognized. You are not invited here for testimony, sir. You are being disruptive. Would you behave this way in a courtroom? No, because the judge would put you in jail. I can't do that.
Well, they put you in jail for what? For contempt of for contempt of what? Oh, for contempt of the court. But again, if you violate the precedent that has been established, and I want to make this clear, the reason that I do bring on experts and that I cite other sources in this manner is that the precedent here I am not as familiar with that establishes the use of the Fifth Amendment in and where and how and under what circumstances and what kind of hearings and in what kind of legal proceedings that the Fifth Amendment can then be invoked under oath. Again, whether we're talking about a courtroom and a criminal indictment, or whether we're talking about proceedings in a congressional hearing, or whether we're talking about supportive testimony, it's not as clear. However, it is very, very clear that if you can just waltz into any hearing, after you've been given a blanket pardon, so you're already safe, and then just say Fifth Amendment. I've heard said by a lot of various punditry today and other legal individuals on the ecosystem, left and right, that the reason that Fauci stood there or sat there and said Fifth Amendment after his opening initial statement a McBajillion times was, well, actually, because he didn't want to break any laws today. I'm sorry, whatever happened to the old classics? Like, I don't recall, and I don't feel that way, or I don't think you're characterizing it that way. Or if they ask you a yes or no question, you say, I don't believe this is a binary question. You can do that. And by the way, the lawyer should have been there to hand him the cards and help him answer. That's what counsel's for. When my counsel tells me to shut up, I do. Makes sense. When your lawyer tells you to shut up, you should do something. But to just sit there and waste everyone's time, again, the entire point here is just performative.
Today, but I can have you escorted from the premises. So I would say, sir, sit quietly and don't say another word. I said, sit quietly. You are not recognized. Another word and you're gone.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear what the attorney has to say.
He is not recognized by the committee or the chair.
Again, the Democrats saying, well, I'd like to hear what the lawyer has to say. So that's not what this is for. Is eventually, again, there's a lot of yelling, a lot of shouting, and eventually the lawyer gets tossed. Now, moving on to the reaction here, because this is where things get fun. Of course, you have your requisite pearl clutching Oh, the horror, the staining, the awful, the breach on society, the innocent man lambasted by those mean MAGA Republicans. Oh, Jussie Smollett and a Subway sandwich. Here's the Bulwark contributor over on MS Now giving his eulogy.
But do you think any of them asked serious questions? Or would you say that the majority of this has been about scoring political points? I ask because Dr. Vin Gupta was on with my colleague Stephanie Rule just a little bit ago. And he said that, for example, Senator Langford had some questions that he thought were actually interesting and fair. And so I'm wondering if you can basically help us cut through the noise here, separate sort of fact and from fiction and from drama.
By the way, other than kind of the framing of it, like setting it up for him, that's a useful question. The hearings are going to be televised. What are the difference? What are the actual questions that are good, that are useful, because some of these diary entries are kind of yikes? And then what are the things that are just, did you order the code red? You're gosh darn right I did. Like, you know, what are the posturing moments?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, there are a few questions that are legitimate. And you know, looking back over the pandemic, I mean, I think a lot of us have said for a long time, it was a once in a century challenge. We did some things right. We did some things wrong. Human beings were making decisions. We should continue to look back and say, have a sober examination of what we got right, what we got wrong.
They're doing the Biden thing. They're doing the Biden dementia thing all over again. All over again. And they have to, because Americans are really upset about this. From the preliminary polling data, independents care a lot more about this than they were expected to. That's concerning for the Dems. Having to bring back old scandals that are actually getting a lot of media attention here, that's a problem. Because it's the media apparatus that told you everything is fine, everything is fine, everything is fine, trust the Fauci, trust the science. And Fauci would get on camera and say, if you attack me, you attack the science. Stay 6 feet apart unless you're going to protest for George Floyd. And then he threw a crappy baseball pitch and wrote about himself over it. I mean, now they have to do I think there should be a sober moment of reflection from anyone but the Republicans. Republicans have nothing to say.
We could do better next time. The problem is that is not what this show is. This is a show trial. This is Rand Paul deeply invested in this narrative that there was a conspiracy. It's Ron Johnson.
So I would agree with him on the kind of tutting the conspiracy if Fauci wasn't on camera saying one thing and then in documented, time-stamped, like on server, time-stamped diary entries in which he says the complete opposite. So he would say much earlier on that the fatality rate, the mortality rate of this was 0.2 to 0.3%. And then he would get on camera and he would say it's 3 to 4% mortality rate or fatality rate. He would say that he bragged in his little diary about getting New York City and California and then the rest of the nation to shut down. And then he would go on the podcast and say, I never told anyone to shut down. I never said that at all. You get into some conspiracism. And I reported on this at the time that the Centers for Disease Control, at the direction of Dr. Anthony Fauci, corroborated with Randy Weingarten of the Teachers Union to keep school districts shut down when there was no reason to do so whatsoever. So now let's actually get to the consequences. Are there going to be some significant consequences? No, there are not. The reason there are not going to be, and by the way, I got a question yesterday from someone who was a nurse during the COVID pandemic, and they were a little frustrated yesterday with the glib, kind of smug, casual Hoosier sarcasm that I brought to bear when I said that, like, no, kind of casually like that. Please do believe me. That sarcasm there, that scorn, that's not for those who dealt with the horrific tragedies that were inflamed by Fauci, those who died cold and alone, whose families were not even allowed to attend their funerals. That kind of stuff. That's not what that mockery and scorn is for. That mockery and scorn is for those who just refuse to simply say, all right, you're in contempt of Congress. Radio crew will send you guys to the commercial break. We have more on the live stream. We have so much news tonight. We haven't even gotten to the ICE stuff yet. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. So, the answer, so Rand Paul made another statement, senator from Kentucky, and he said, by law, we have one other hearing that we have to do, and then we can do stuff. Okay, sure. If we actually see, not just a forwarding for a DOJ investigation, say, look, you're held in contempt of Congress until you decide to answer these questions, Congress can hold anyone who violates a subpoena indefinitely in that kind of contempt. They can. That is a legal thing that Congress can do. That is a power vested in the committees of the United States Congress. If you are subpoenaed by Congress and you say, no, I'm not doing it, or you violate the rules during your time that you were questioned, they can put you in a special little jail cell just for you until you decide you're going to answer questions. I mean, either that or my preferred consequence, which is making him the guinea pig for any and every disease we're studying until the end of time. But alas, that's at least as one comment said yesterday. There is going to be some downstream stuff, as I told you, because there are Democrats who just cannot let go. So in the middle of this entire Democrat civil war that they're having, where you have James Carville, Bill Clinton's former campaign superstar, who is going after the socialists, he also has to turn around and kind of do the Jake Tapperization of we didn't know what we were doing. And also, I think Fauci is wonderful. And it just comes across as here you go.
The main thing we learned from the release of his personal texts or emails or whatever it was, is we didn't learn anything. This was basically an honest guy.
Oh, see, the thing we learned from the diary is that there was no diary. There is no war in Ba Sing Se. There is no spoon. I mean, folks, come on now, honey, sweetie baby. Don't tell me that. Oh, what we learned is that we didn't learn anything. Yes, thank you, Miss Frizzle. Another successful field trip on the Magic School Bus.
Trying to deal with a once in a millennium public health issue, who did, by the way, there is no evidence that he tried to make any money off of it. There was no evidence he was recommending one thing or another. But
oh, he never tried to make any money off of it. Oh, okay.
Everything you do. But I don't think the guy...
Weren't there document leaks that showed Fauci getting offers to go elsewhere after his time in the administration to big, huge pharma agencies or medical consulting firms? Wasn't this guy, and hasn't this guy still been brought around and been given really nice honorariums? An honorarium is something that you give to someone for like a speech or like a speaking engagement. So, for example, like a TPUSA event that I'd gone to previously to speak at, they gave me an honorarium so that my time is covered. That would be what that's for. The super chat that just came in, the Mar Alago M. I'm guessing mom, maybe? Either way, a very kind $2 super chat that says, Tony, subpoena all of Fauci's staff next? No, the next answer is hold him in contempt of Congress and put him in the jail cell. That's the answer. If the Congress starts acting like the Republican Congress did after the Civil War during the Reconstruction era, it'll be fantastic. But if they're going to act like the bureaucratic and I don't know if we have the votes, reconciliate. Can we charge Fauci in reconciliation? No. You're not going to convince these clowns. Quit pretending as though this is a big fight to convince people. I'm not here trying to convince you guys of anything. I'm simply reporting the details as they are and giving you my analysis of them, because I steep too much in this nasty political bathwater. Radio crew, welcome back for the commercial. There was one final little reaction to this that I can't help but share with you because it's just such gaslighting. So Fauci, who wrote page upon page of Julia Roberts and Jake Tapper and all of the media fauna. I mean, dude's obsessed with the camera. Now look, as the national correspondent for the Daily Signal, who has mentioned that he was on CNN Newsnight the times that he's been on, I tell you about some of my bigger media hits. Being on camera, sometimes it's fun. Now, a lot of times it gets really, really old and boring, and I kind of want to stab my ears and eyes with scissors, but sometimes it's kind of fun. And everybody's got a bit of an ego, and if you're involved in politics, God knows, ego's prevalent. But this man was obsessed. I've seen shorter young adult novels written on Wattpad and fan fictions about people going on about their own little celebrity fetishes that didn't hold a candle to Anthony Fauci here. But CBS Mornings is like, well, come on, who hasn't, taken a photo with a celebrity? That's all this is.
In Natalie's introduction, she mentioned that the diary entries sometimes indicate that Dr. Fauci's reveling in his fame. There is an awareness in reading the public diaries that he is very aware of his own public profile. So one of the risks, as you know, of celebrity in politics is people start making decisions with an eye towards the camera. Does that happen in medicine when a public health leader is being lauded on cameras almost on a daily basis? Does that influence the way perhaps a public health official or a doctor makes decisions and recommendations?
He's just a victim of circumstance. That's all. Yeah, I mean, if you had people every single day who are talking to you and telling you things, wouldn't that affect how you get in front of the camera and you do things? This is why administrations have press secretaries, for the record. That's why you have a press secretary. They know the media. You give them the talking points. You say, this is what I want to be said. The president has a press secretary. It's called the vice president. The White House has a press secretary. It's Carolyn Leavitt. Different organizations and administrations. I was almost the press secretary for the Department of Education this time around. Maybe I shouldn't have said that on the air. Whoops. Okay? I mean, like, you have press secretaries, all right? That's not a shock to anybody. But the administration official is not really supposed to get in front and like change who they are on the camera. And especially if you're the science guy, you're not supposed. We're going to talk about Chris Wright, the energy secretary, here in a minute, because the polling is getting more wild by the second. And the administration is doing some things to really rock the economy, like Justin Timberlake singing in the early aughts. And I don't see Chris Wright like flipping his lid based on what the news is. That'd be a bad energy secretary. But the answer here is extra awful.
I want to say I've actually read all of the pages of the diary.
Okay. That's really gay.
2 releases, 1,100 and then some almost 500.
Right.
I don't believe you. Dr. Celine Gounder, editor-at-large for public health at KFF, I don't believe you. I've read all 1,500 pages of Fauci's diary. I'm calling no, you have not. And if you do, you're a loser. I don't believe any. I mean, the journalist teams who have gone through things and cited things, I doubt there are very many people who have actually just flipped through page after page. Stop it.
Most of his comments are actually about the pressure it was creating and the harassment and death threats and what that led to in terms of security. So that's actually most of his comments about the fame.
He's the victim of circumstance. It's so sad. He was pressured. I mean, he's just a poor little guy. I mean, can you imagine the pressure on the president to debate and not have dementia? I mean, he flew all the way around the world, the poor guy. I mean, Kamala Harris is both a woman and black. Can you imagine the kind of pressure that puts on a campaign? Oh, victims of the circumstance. Oh, my smelling salts, Martha.
Who here has not taken a selfie with a celebrity who's been here in the studio? Right.
So that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my entire life. I do want to address a comment from Sam there. Oh, Sam the Irish. I would like to say, he says, I don't know, Tony, women can be really nosy. No offense, ladies. That is true. All right. Hell hath no fury like a lady researching the guy that she's interested in dating. You know, can I get an amen? And to be fair, I will allow that. You know what? Maybe she's just really nosy. Fair. I'll allow it. But anyway, who of us hasn't taken a picture with a celebrity? I had the opportunity when I was in New York while walking through Tribeca to meet an Instagram like content creator who does like fake movie trailers and kind of things. And it was really cool. Stopped, talked for just a second. It was pretty neat. And I took a photo with him. Absolutely. But that's not what this is. Having dinner with the media who's going to bat for you a ton of times and framing the narrative, that's not what this is.
And I'm going to say it's basically everybody, right?
Yeah.
It's human nature.
It's human nature.
To lean into the
It's human nature. Oh, and then the Michael Jackson theme fades in and we're all fine. Stop it. There is a reason that Americans do not trust the media unequivocally anymore. And by the way, this is an excellent reason why. Because you could be objective here and no one really would blame you, especially if you're a newer individual in the profession who wasn't in front of the camera at that moment. Or you can say, look, I made some mistakes. I trusted him and I was fooled. I was befuddled. I was Smeckledorfed. Oh, I couldn't believe it. You could try that approach. All right? But I don't think that's really the path forward that they have chosen. So that brings us over to the Democrats who, again, you have people like James Tallarico's getting roasted for his Anthony Fauci action figure. Do we have this? No, we don't. So I don't have the tweet loaded, but James Tallarico running for Senate in Texas, he's getting roasted because he got for Christmas a Dr. Anthony Fauci action figure, and then told everyone to go get vaxxed and boosted. He's getting roasted. A lot of the Democrats for their opinions on Fauci and the show trial, and it's just like the assassination attempt of Reagan or something. They're having a really rough time in the party. So a lot of people have said Democrats have been ignoring this on purpose. I don't think that's necessarily the case because Democrats have their own horrible political firestorm. So there's an ICE crackdown that's been getting a lot. The Democrats are also facing a huge issue series in the polls. So this is where we bring the Trump stuff, the Fauci stuff, all of it all together. And this is where things start to get a little bit squirrely. So according to the polling that just came out from the Quinnipiac group, the party net approval, Republicans are down 34 points. People are not super thrilled about Republicans in Congress. However, Democrats are down as low as I think we've ever seen it. They are down. They have a net unfavored. They're like down 44 points in favorability. They're having a rough time. Independents view Democrats, the Democratic Party, with a net favorability rating of 30%. The disapproval rate, for as far as independents are concerned, for the Democrats going into this midterm election season, 70% disapproval. That's insane. And the generic congressional ballot, as I've cited before here on the show, it varies from polling group to polling group throughout July. Republicans have been a lot closer than you might expect. However, Republicans do have a little bit of an Achilles heel. According to Lakshya Jain on the argument and some of their polling, Democrats are leading on the congressional ballot primarily because of the military conflict in Iran. And that gives them, believe it or not, a series of problems going into this election. We're going to talk about it. Radio crew, we know you guys have to head out because of the FCC rules. We'll catch you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. So right now, based on the available polling that we're getting from every single angle, it appears that while everyone expected the economy to be what's really killing voters with Republicans, that's not it. It's the Iranian conflict as it goes on, which, by the way, this is something that's been known, tale as old as time. While a military activity, while a military operation is ongoing, people aren't a fan of it. If the country walks away a winner, everyone suddenly loves it. And so the Trump administration has made that gamble. However, here's the fun thing. You are supposed to see Republicans losing a ton of ground on the economy, and you're just not. Voters seem to blame Donald Trump more for the economy than they are blaming Republicans in the House for it. And it's very, very interesting. I talked about this with producer Daniel this afternoon, because normally what you see is the president's approval rating tied to the generic congressional ballot. That's what you normally see. So like if Trump's doing really great stuff, you're supposed to see Republican support surge and Democrat support flunk. And then when Trump's approval rating goes down, Republicans' approval rating are supposed to fall with it. That's not what's happening, because voters are relying less and less and less on Congress. And the midterms are becoming less and less and less of a slam against the president of the United States. They are. They're just not as impactful. And the polling data so far is showing that whereas Republicans are supposed to be really, really, really down in the ditch, they're just not. So Republicans are in this danger zone territory for the Democrats on the generic ballot. But believe it or not, that's not the worst thing. Before we get to what is truly the worst thing for the Dems, because this is a totally different electoral map. There, I'll spoil it for myself. Jim Garrity over at National Review said that the last big issue that Republicans have is the economy. It is, because the Iran war stuff, he argues, is going to be baked into the polls by the time you hit the midterms. As in, he doesn't see voters going out to the DMV, because that's what going to vote is like. It's like going to the DMV. It sucks. He said that he doesn't really see people coming out to the polls in aggravation over Iran. He doesn't see that. What he does see people coming out to the polls over maybe is the economic situation, and that regarding tariffs. He doesn't like the president throwing in essentially a bunch of tariffs in on international groups right before the election. That makes sense, given that the latest CBS YouGov poll finds that 64% of U.S. adults oppose any new tariffs on imported goods, and then 36% support them. And there's even kind of a sort of in that 36% support that's maybe not as great. So that brings us over to the administration. What are they actually doing here? Well, this gets to the administrative aims on actually developing the economy. So Secretary Chris Wright, Secretary of Energy, has talked about adding a bunch of additional megawatts on the power grid, making energy cheaper here at home. If that pays off before the election, there's going to be dividends. But it isn't a guaranteed thing yet. Here's the secretary.
We're here just to celebrate the Department of Energy is leasing these federal lands to multiple private companies to build some new nuclear technologies, as you spoke about. Also to build 2 gigawatts of new natural gas power generation. that'll serve both a 1.2 gigawatt data center that'll be built here. That's the majority of that $100 billion, but also to add 800 megawatts of additional power onto the grid here, which will benefit all of the surrounding states.
So the point that the Trump administration is making is that by kind of sweet talking big tech and investing a ton of money in building new power plants, sure, some of the power will go to data centers, and then a bunch of the offshoot power then goes to the neighboring areas. And we're seeing some of the additional power supply being added in places like Texas and in Florida. We're not actually seeing the energy rates spike that was being promised. Now, all that I've told you so far, all that I've said so far in this, and I know it's kind of a lot of vegetables, not really exciting, all of this so far is whether or not Republicans will come out to vote. I have not said independence. None of this is about wooing independence. It's not. And the reason that none of this is about wooing independence is because there are very, very, very few people who are still undecided. Very, very few. And additionally, as David Wasserman points out over at the Cook Political Report, none of this may even matter. None of this may even matter. Why? Because the number of swing districts is declining sharply, and the number of majority Republican districts is growing sharply. You may remember this whole big fight about redistricting and gerrymandering, again, which kind of started up in the New England area a couple of years ago, that eventually moved into a conversation about racially gerrymandered districts in Texas and in the American South, and then swept out and Republicans gained a bunch of prospective seats once you no longer had districts that were governed by a racial selection, which, you know, kind of sounds like the whole point of the civil rights movement. Well, Democrats have been panicking consistently, not only because the Democrats are sufficiently in debt, which we're going to get to, and also losing a bunch of money to scammers in the meantime, which is just freaking hilarious. There are a bunch of Republican districts that are not special election territory. I'll get to that in a second. What you're seeing right now is that, according to his statement, I actually want to pivot over there and make sure that I get his exact kind of function here, or his exact analysis. The reason that this particular midterm is going to be particularly spicy, it's yielded a House map that is far more Republican and far less elastic, meaning you don't have a lot of swing district fights going on. Democrats now need to win 57 of 77 seats in the R+5 to D+5 range in order to win a House majority. So allow me to explain. Districts that are considered swing districts, either they have like a kind of +5 Republican or a +5 Democrat. It kind of changes from time to time. Democrats need to win 74% of all swing districts in order to win a House majority. And that is if Democrats were in the best of places right now. Here's the thing. Republicans right now may be demoralized. And I brought this up right after talking about Fauci for a reason. There are a lot of Republicans who are not super thrilled about the things that Congress is doing. There are a lot of Republicans and independents who are not super thrilled about like how Trump's handling some aspects of the economy. There are a lot of Republicans who have some unease with how the Trump administration is handling the Gulf War II electric boogaloo, whether they think the Trump administration should be going harder or not going at all or taking it a totally different direction. Whether or not that makes Republicans get out to vote changes based on the age. Republicans are an older party. Older individuals are likely to go vote, rain or shine, snow or hail, dry or wet. Republicans are more likely to go out and vote. The Democrat Party is more based right now on the youths, who are very much fair weather fans. And if they're not ecstatic about their candidate, they're not going to vote. They're not. Why? Because we've seen this the last 8 elections. I've been told the youths are coming, and then they don't. They don't. They're a nice salad seasoning, but it's not the actual dish. And that brings us over to the Democrat Party, because the Democrats are not fine right now. This is not a midterm election in which you have a ton of policy proposals and things that we totally would be doing. The only policy proposals that have been put forward are universal health care that no one has any plan for. It's just like, oh, we're going to give you health care. No other questions, please. And then all of the policy proposals from the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, which have split the party so strongly that now Chuck Schumer, the Senate minority leader, won't even answer questions about one of the primary calls from the Democratic Socialists of America, which is abolish the Senate of the United States.
The Democratic Socialists of America recently released their new platform. One of the things in that platform is to abolish the Senate and create a new unicameral House in Congress. Is this something Democratic Socialist candidates have been winning in races across the country? Is this something that has a place, this type of policy position in the Democratic
Bottom line is Democrats from one end of the spectrum to the other are going to be working to defeat Trump, to bring down costs.
Defeat Trump. We want to make it all about Trump because that's really the only thing they've got any kind of think they have footing on. That doesn't correlate to the polls. Number two, they're going to bring down prices. They do not tell you how. They won't tell you how. There's no plan to bring down prices for the left.
To go after his corruption.
And then they're going to make it a bunch of investigations and courtroom hearings and proceedings, which is not selling voters. Seriously, there are no independents, not a single one that I have seen anywhere of any credibility that has said, oh, I tell you what, we need a bunch of congressional hearings right now. No.
And to end the chaos.
And to end the chaos. Ah, yes, because the Democrat Party is definitely not chaotic at all. I don't think this is going to go the way that you believe that it is there, Chuckles. And the reason is that regarding the chaos, and I'll get to the email scam here in a second because the DNC is also out of money. This is all about propensity. Democrats are very, very demoralized at the moment. They're not as excited as some of the media outlets are saying, oh, everyone's very, very energized and ready to go. No. Not seeing it. Independents are not going to go. This is not one that people are eager to throw their hat in. It's going to be a very low propensity election. And right now that favors Republicans. The internal fighting in the Democrat Party is not helping. The Democrats being broke, very, very broke right now is not helping. Calling for Ken Martin, the leader of the DNC, to resign in the middle of the cycle. It's not helping. Replacing Graham Plattner in the middle of the cycle. It's not helping. A lot of problems, a lot of issues. However, when it comes to the chaos, Democrats have decided on their big final social push for the year. They have already. They are going to go all in on immigration. Now, according to all the polling, voters still trust Republicans far more than Democrats on immigration and on crime. So Democrats going all in and saying, remember there was that week after the ICE incident with Renee Good and Alex Preddy up in Minnesota? Remember that that moment where everyone was really on our side? They think they can recapture this if they just accuse the Trump administration of being really evil and awful for ending temporary protected status for Haitians and Syrians. And then also if they go all in on saying that ICE needs to be abolished and destroyed, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you've got Sri Tanadar up in Michigan posting this video, which is this video is being criticized quite widely. There is a whistleblower, a detainee in an immigration customs enforcement facility who says they're raping everyone here. There's just everybody. Every woman is getting brutally raped by ICE. And so Sri Tanadar from Michigan gets up there and says, quote, ICE is raping women nonstop who are completely powerless to fight back while getting paid with your tax dollars. This taxpayer-funded Epstein-style sex trafficking ring must end now. My eyebrows are huge. Quote, we've got to abolish ICE and prosecute these rapists. Okay, if you're in a position like that, you can't do that. This idea that we have in modern social media where you can just go out and accuse anyone and everyone of being a rapist anytime, that's not a thing. That's not a thing. And that's not going to convince everyone on your side. Here's a video that he shares, by the way.
Hello, my name is Lorena, and I am at the South Louisiana ICE Processing Center in Basile. There is all kinds of unfair discrimination here, not just in the GEO Center, but also in ICE. They bring us from different states supposedly to fight our case, but it's really just to spend money here and lose. Most of the women who are detained here don't know where our children are because they take them away from us and don't give us any information.
Now, I'm going to be very, very clear right up here, right up front. There is something that is very, 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 very wrong with the way this video is. Now, originally it says that this video is in Spanish, and this is a translation over her words. So someone has put the words over. It doesn't look very not looking super duper credible. There's a lot of questions also is the framing and whether or not this video is even real. But again, you've got congressmen that are just out there saying ICE is just out there raping everybody for maximum shock factor.
They bring us here, and there are people who spend more than 15 months here and then get deported even after winning their case. The staff expose detainees' information so that they can be trafficked.
So she's alleging that the immigration customs enforcement teams are keeping people here after their cases have been won. I asked a couple of friends of mine, both on the left and on the libertarian immigration side, if they had any, because I wanted the info. I figured, well, you've probably got these things bookmarked. So I said, hey, are there any instances that we know of like this? And their answer to me immediately was, nope, not a single one. That we have no idea, no instances of this. They're just completely making things up. There's no evidence that any immigration customs enforcement individuals are holding these big mass rapes. It's all to stoke violence and create more chaos. That's not really helpful for Schumer. It's not really helpful for the Democrats, but they're going to go all in. You have Joaquin Castro, another representative, saying, oh, the ICE is going after the best of the best, like the best people ever that we have here in the entire country are the illegal immigrants. Good luck with this.
What is the purpose here?
Well, I think the purpose is cruelty, and the purpose is to send this message that we don't like immigrants and we don't want anybody here. And you're right, Donald Trump, and during his campaign, sold the country on this idea that we're going to go after criminals and we're going to deport criminals. But what we've seen is that instead of going after the worst of the worst, in many cases, they've gone after the best of the best. People that have lived here for decades, who have families, who have not committed any crimes at all, who have been productive members of society.
Okay, so there's a little bit of an issue again with this. The whole productive members of society, we've talked about this consistently. You're not paying all of the taxes. You are getting federal benefits when you are not supposed to. There is egregious fraud that we are finding. And then even regarding the legal immigration system, when you have an H-1B visa system that encourages individuals to relocate from India with 15 of their immediate family members, when the job wasn't even offered to an American in the first place. I mean, Americans are really feeling, at least based on the polling data, that the immigration system needs to be more closed off. That's not coming from Republicans. That is coming from the majority of independents. And the idea that, and by the way, why do I bring this up? You say, Tony, we know a lot of this. Why are you bringing this up in this context? Because this is what the Democrats believe is going to get independents to come out and vote for them in the midterms. Not even in a politically active election would this work. This is like the abortion argument. Roe versus Wade is going to get all of the ladies out. Oh, we got to win our abortion rights back. And then they got out there and they promised all of this. Taylor Swift said she's going to register all of these people to vote. And then it did really, really, really little. Really little. So it's truly an amazing time to go after this kind of stuff. Gavin Newsom also trying the same style. What Americans do recognize, though, are the intense amounts of violence, and they want solutions. So what are the solutions? So one half of the left says we need Nuremberg trials and to abolish ICE and everything. The Democrats' other solution, the other half, would be putting up posters. So in Chicago, the officials are on the L train, putting up posters.
Putting up these signs as an indication of what constitutes.
Yep, Cook County. Chirac, pretty violent. What are they going to do to stop it? Quote, violence on the CTA will not be tolerated. The Cook County State Attorney's Office will prosecute and seek pre-trial detention. You mean like keeping them in jail and not letting them out on bail? There's a freaking concept. For all violent offenses on public transit. Hey, what about prosecuting all violent offenses, period? This is like the gun zone. Man, I can't believe this shooting happened.
There will be any criminal actions on the CTA. So we're hoping to deter crime and to encourage people to move forward.
We're going to get people, these signs are going to deter crime. I'm seriously, truly looking for a single crime. The person about to commit a murder, and the heck, murder's illegal here. You better slow your roll there, buckaroo. Did you read the sign? Also, given that a lot of the individuals committing these violent crimes don't speak English in the first place, have you ever noticed that? Like the warning signs about committing crime, like all of the signs about federal benefits, they always are like bilingual. You ever notice this? But like whenever it comes to a warning about committing crimes, they're always on only English. You never have like the half English, half Spanish sign that's like, the violence, not allowed. No. Pada. I don't see that. Do you? Oh, it's only in English. Just little curious things there. So I'm sure if that is what they believe is going to drive things forward, I'm just not seeing it. Now, we've also talked about the socialist split in the party. We've talked about all of this various discontent. John Fetterman is being shoved out of the party as quickly as possible. Chuck Schumer has come forward and said he really wants John Fetterman to stay in the party. Best of luck to you. Very, very strong. Best of luck to you. Now, I did want to mention this. This is just exciting. This is exciting news. I'm excited to share this with you because it's just quite special. This would be from a Fox News report earlier.
Embarrassment for the Democratic National Committee. Listen to this. They reportedly lost almost $29,000 to an email scammer who was pretending to be the committee's chairman, Ken Martin. Now,
imagine already being many millions of dollars in debt. Many millions. You have no money, none. And then you fall for an email scam pretending to be your boss. Now, I understand that this hits a lot of individuals across the country. I hate scammers very, very much. I have seen members of my friends and family who've been affected by scams before. When you are in a highly intensive, serious corporate environment or a political environment, trust absolutely no one. If you're in like the DNC in this case like this, you get scammed in this way, I don't think I trust you on your policy proposals. You can't even keep yourself from getting scammed as a high-value target.
National correspondent Mark Meredith has more on this Democratic dysfunction and reports live in Washington with more on this. And Mark, it has been a brutal week of headlines for the DNC.
And the week's not even over yet, Bill. Good afternoon to you. With the midterms fast approaching, some Democrats think now is not the time to reshuffle party leadership. But as you know, there's been a drip here in Washington, as some on the left do think Chairman Ken Martin needs to go. You may remember he was voted chairman early last year. He's numerous concerns about fundraising, a lack of party strategy in the wake of the last election, and there was that recent New York Times piece which really put things in perspective. The Times saying that Martin's fraying nerves are showing in a peak of frustration in early July, throwing his phone at the desk of a junior aide while upbraiding the person. But top congressional Democrats say Martin should still stay put.
I love it.
Yes, the chairman has my full support. What we've seen over the last 18 plus months is that Democrats have won every single meaningful election up and down the ballot across the country.
We're going to address this in a second. I've heard this claim a lot. Oh, Democrats have won all of these special elections. Oh, man, it's just blown right through.
During that period of time. And we look forward to our continued partnership.
There's also the reports out that the DNC's debt situation was so dire the party put its D.C. headquarters up for a collateral loan. Apparently this has happened in years past, but this all comes as Democrats also face questions about what's next.
Well, I think we always have to look at where things are at and understand that we need to do better. And I think he understands how important it is. The DNC is an important partner and they need to do better. I think they understand that.
Okay, so that's Representative Susan DelBene. She's the DCCC chair. So here's the reason that the whole, oh, we've won all of these special elections, we're totally fine. Oh, it's amazing. Do you remember that in the post-Trump loss in 2020, Biden victory, that Republicans came forward and won like a ton of little special elections? And I was told the same thing. Oh, it's going to be a super huge ultimate red wave supreme in 2022. And then it wasn't. Here's the actual issue with this particular polling data. And I want to make this very, very clear. I am not as worried about special elections. Everyone always wants to peg special election stuff as a bellwether. And again, I'm not promising super duper Republican victories anywhere at all. No one snatches defeat from the jaws of victory like Republicans. Democrats are currently trying to take the trophy. However, I want to make this clear here. The reason that I do not believe that the special elections are the bellwether, zero of the special elections were polling upsets. None of them. Right now, you have a lot of Republicans who are polling ahead of the radical Democrat individuals. In a lot of these districts that Democrats need to win, again, they need 74% of all swing districts to get a majority in the House. 77%. Now, in these current elections, now the polling is a little bit empty here because not all of the primaries have happened. Like Michigan's primary is still up. Democrats are not ahead in the polling in the vast majority, in the super majority of these swing districts. They're not, which means they're in hot water. None. The congressional specials in the 119th, Whether we're looking at Georgia's 14th, New Jersey's 11th, California's 1st, Virginia's 11th, Arizona's 7th, Texas 18th, Tennessee 7th. None of those elections upset polling, as in like they went into the election, the Democrat was polling higher, and then they lost to the Republican, or vice versa. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. You say, oh, well, it was a Trump plus whatever district. Nope, the polling going into that election, what you predicted, what you got. The state legislative specials. With Wisconsin's Supreme Court, Democrats flipping seats, overperforming these margins. None of them overperformed in polling. None of them. Not a single one of them. So if you're telling me that the special election, I'm looking at the polling right now. And again, the reason I'm looking at polling is because that is where people are telling the pollsters right now, hey, this is where I'm believing, this is what I'm seeing. And with the socialist stuff and the civil war in the party, it's not getting any better. Now, again, Republicans are fighting, but they're also just kind of waiting to see if Trump's gambles pay off or not, which we are still waiting to see. That is a case that I have made. And I told you at the end of the second quarter, for those who have been around here for a while, at the end of the second quarter, I'd kind of give you my analysis as to whether I believed that, you know, we were going to be in a totally, you know, terrible state or an amazing state on the economy. And the truth of the matter is, it's just kind of meh. It's just fine. It's fine. Low propensity election in the midterms, not benefiting Democrats. Now, I do want to dive into some other really quick updates here on the Iranian situation, because things have changed a lot since we started the show. There are quite a few new sites that have been struck by the United States, by Saudi Arabia. A lot of stuff to update you on. So at the beginning of the evening, we told you that only Sirak was struck. Well, now all of these locations are currently being plastered. So a lot of places near the Iraqi and Kuwaiti borders. We're also seeing Bandar-e Mashar being struck. That's the northernmost port along the Persian Gulf. We're also seeing Bushehr, Keshem, Kish, Sirak, Bandar Abbas. Again, a lot of the islands on the coast being hit again. It's just not clear yet whether or not the president of the United States is going to make kind of a larger move. There's an NBC report that says Trump is frustrated with national security officials that can't agree on a strategy. There are reports of jets over Iraq, a lot of airstrike stuff that is going on. It's not clear whether there are a series of strikes that have a stronger purpose, or whether the United States is again trying to soften or hit targets that have fired munitions, or kind of trying to keep the status quo at play currently. So those are some of the updates that we have right now. I'm not seeing anything exceptionally significant here, at least as far as updating you on this is concerned, other than so far, the Saudis are a lot more involved, which is notable, but it's nothing that is, you know, extremely significant. Now, very briefly, I did want to mention, because I want to make sure that we do thank our sponsors. We're huge fans of Cove Pure here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. And why am I a huge fan of Cove Pure on the Tony Kinnett Cast? Because we're talking about, again, the midterms. We're talking about Democrats around the country. Michigan is in focus. If Flint, Michigan has taught this country anything, the government's word on the safety of your drinking water, it is worth absolutely nothing. Flint's not a one-off. The problem is everywhere. It's why you should use Cove Pure to purify your water. There are still millions of lead service lines actively carrying water to American homes, many installed before your parents were born. Here's what the government doesn't tell you. Testing method that utilities use to check lead levels, it's specifically designed to collect the least contaminated sample, not the most contaminated sample. And that's not according to me. It's according to the EPA itself. Most recent federal data shows that, look, water systems serving more than 250 million Americans detected lead from 21 to 24. Lead has no taste, no smell, doesn't change the color of your water, and there's no safe level of lead exposure. There's a decent chance that you could, in fact, be exposed to lead. Even low levels are linked to some very significant issues medically for adults and children. Cove Pure, the system that we use here in the studio, removes it. It's certified to eliminate up to 99.9% of all contaminants. It is the most delicious water that indubitably makes my wonderful crack cocaine Cuban coffee that keeps me going. And yeah, the coffee's better and stronger and more delicious since I've been putting Cove Pure in the Mr. Coffee. That's right. It removes all the junk, so I don't have to worry about my brain being fried here on air any more than it probably was already. And look, I've talked about it before. I'm extremely picky when it comes to the sponsors for the show. We are very, very thankful for the Cove Pure team. We're thrilled. Why? Because they take really good care of us. They take really good care of you guys. A lot of you guys have messaged in the comment section. You said, I got a Cove Pure and it's fantastic. I love it. It's awesome. And I wholeheartedly agree. I do. It's fantastic. So right now, go to covepure.com/TonyK for $250 off. Yeah, that's something they're doing for my audience. For you, the people. And unlike Zoran Mamdani, Cove Pure delivers. Unlike New York City's awful tap water, my Cove Pure filter puts out great water. I'm awesome. It's amazing. I was just in New York on Monday. Hated the water. It was awful. Tried brushing my teeth with it. I wanted to vomit a Supreme Pizza. It was just terrible. Cove Pure makes delicious water. Again, COVEPURE.com/TonyK, TONYK for $250 off your Cove Pure system. Thank you very much for sponsoring this show. All right. One last little bit here in the bonus tonus section of the show. Just from me to you, before we send you over to a bunch of the other budget disasters. Again, I've told you there are a lot of little things that are going to be frustrating for the Democrats going into this election. One of these, for example, is happening in Kentucky. So, and I know the McConnell thing, you think it's where I'm going? It's not. It is, in fact, the Louisville public school system in Jefferson County in Louisville. So many of the blue school districts that just promised, hey, give us lots of more money, are hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. We're going to be looking later this week at a lot of these education stories that are once again coming back up. The Department of Education is now investigating Minnesota after this bizarre scandal over these transgender dolls. We talked about them briefly over on the show yesterday. We're going to be talking to Tyler O'Neill, the senior editor at the Daily Signal, probably by the end of the week to get into a little bit more of these details. I do have right here at the end one final statement from U.S. CENTCOM at 8:24 p.m. Eastern, so 3 minutes ago. Quote, U.S. forces began launching strikes again against Iran at 8 p.m. Eastern today. The strikes are a powerful response to yesterday's attempted Iranian attacks on U.S. forces based in the Middle East. Interesting stuff indeed. Interesting stuff indeed. Before we swing you guys over to the interview that we have with the auditor for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, it's a pretty cool interview, not gonna lie. I wanted to take a chance to also thank, there were some other super chats today. And I'm not going to answer the state crimes for Fauci being prosecuted yet, because I have a couple of people looking into that for me over at the Heritage Foundation. They're legal experts. I'm getting that answer. We'll have that one tomorrow. A $2 super chat from Chio that says, likely Ken Martin fell for the scam for Ken Martin. That's really funny. I very much agree. That's a huge LOL there. So again, we're getting ready to pivot over to this interview. This will be over on the new Tony Kinnett Cast channel. By the way, you can subscribe to that over at Tony Kinnett Cast here on YouTube. It's great. You should absolutely subscribe there. We've got more stuff coming tomorrow. Take care. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We're going to kick you over to that interview on that side of YouTube. Y'all, take care.